When I was given my first harp, and before I could find a private teacher, I wanted to know what books were available that I could use to get started on my own. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'll go over the books that I used and tell you which ones I think would be the most beneficial for different types of adult harp learners. Welcome to the Prime Time Harpist. My name is Kathy Lowe. I've been playing the harp now for almost 8 years. I started out trying to teach myself. I've also had some private lessons, and I've learned a lot along the way about what works best for me. As I mentioned, the first thing I wanted to do was find some books that I could use to get started, and I'm sure many of you are wondering about that as well. So let's dive into some books that I've used and I'm quite familiar with. Also, online, I asked some of my harp friends what books they used and what books they'd recommend. So at the end of the video, I'll insert a link to a list of other books that other harp learners have found worked well for them. So there are 3 books I'm going to talk about today that are all geared for beginning harpists. Whether you've studied music before and have some musical background, or whether you have none at all, that will help you determine which of these books might be a best fit for you. So they all cover the same basic things, and they all incorporate the concepts they teach into tunes that you learn along the way, very simple ones in the beginning and progressively getting more challenging as they go along. They cover basics like proper hand position and musical notation, fingering and chords. But each of these authors introduce these things at different times and in different ways in their books. So I think I'll start with the one that's most comprehensive and the one that I've heard mentioned most by other people who have started to learn to play the harp. It's been around for a long time and it's been through many updates, and it's Sylvia Wood's book, Teach Yourself to Play the Folk Harp. This book has a lot of information. It's almost like an encyclopedia of learning the harp. It goes into the history of the harp. It talks about different types of harps. It moves kind of quickly, and there's a lot of information to read through, but it's a great reference book to go back to time and time again. Sylvia starts out with teaching note reading along with teaching hand positions and giving you some exercises and tunes to play. She has you playing with both hands together right from the start, but she's only having you learn to read the treble clef at first. And she doesn't introduce the bass clef until about the 5th chapter of the book. But you'll be putting your hands together almost from the beginning. And for some people, this is a great challenge, but it's a skill you certainly need to know. Another book that's also designed for the harpist who is teaching themselves to play is by Pamela Bruner, and it's called Play the Harp Beautifully. She starts teaching note reading right away, but she teaches it one note at a time and one finger at a time. So the first several sections are using just one finger and showing you how to play different notes on the staff using that finger. And again, both hands, but Pamela uses the bass clef right from the beginning for the left hand. Although the hands don't play together for a while, they alternate between left hand and right hand. One thing I really like about Pamela's book is that it's loaded with photos. So she not only describes proper seating position, proper hand positions, but she has photos of all of that. And when you get into playing more than one note at a time, playing two notes together, then triads, and then chords, you'll see photos of the shapes your hands should be in to play all of those things. The pieces at the end of the book aren't as difficult as the other two books. Her book is very deliberately laid out, and the pace is quite slow. So I think for someone who has little or no musical training, this would be a good book to start with. The last book I'd like to talk about is Betty Perrette's first harp book. This is really the most basic book. It's designed for someone without any musical training at all. And it's also designed for someone to work with a teacher. So although it's, as I said, very basic, there's not a lot of explanation about the different ideas and concepts and techniques in the book. So it really, I think, requires the presence of a teacher. There isn't a lot said about hand position or reading music. The emphasis is really on exercises more so than songs, and it starts with one finger at a time. She does introduce both the treble and the bass clef simultaneously and has you playing both hands together from the start. So I hope these brief explanations have been somewhat helpful to you. For me, I think if you were going to buy one of these three books, whether or not you've had any training, I'd lean towards the Sylvia Woods book because, as I said before, it's a terrific reference book that you can use over a longer period of time, and you can go back to when you have questions or you need a refresher on anything. But a close second for me would be Pamela Bruner's book because I really did like the layout of the book and how she used photos to show proper positions of your hands, which neither of the other books do include. But if you're studying from the beginning with a private teacher, you may find that that teacher is using Betty Perrette's book, as I have heard many private teachers do use. Two more books I'd like to mention before I close. One by Sylvia Woods, which she recommends as a follow-up to her Teach Yourself book. That book takes a deeper look into music theory. It's called Music Theory and Arranging for Folk Harps. The other book, many people are interested in exercises for building the strength in your fingers and building your technique. And a book that was recommended to me and that I've used is Deborah Frio's book, Harp Exercises for Agility and Speed. So these are books I've used, and I'm speaking from my own experience. Again, I'm going to provide you with a list of books other people have used and that they recommend so that you can look into those more deeply on your own if you don't feel any of these are the perfect fit for you. In my next video, we're going to delve into the myriad of online resources. When I first started Harp, there wasn't nearly as much available online. But many people now have started teaching online, and they've created harp communities that have been very successful for adult harp learners. I belong to two of those communities, and I'm going to talk quite a bit about those, but again, I'll also mention several others that are highly recommended by my harp learner colleagues. So I hope that you'll be looking out for that video, which will follow this one in about 2 more weeks. Now I'd like to share with you a tune on my harpsichord that I learned early on from the Sylvia Woods book. It's a favorite and quite an old traditional tune that I'm sure you're familiar with, called Green Sleeves. last few weeks, I've been posting a piece that I've learned every other Thursday, but next week I'm going to change my schedule because Monday, March 17th, is the 5th anniversary of this YouTube channel. So I'm going to do a YouTube premiere at 12 noon on the 17th, and I will be showing a compilation of some pieces I learned when I first started playing the harp. It was during the beginning of the COVID epidemic, and I decided that I would do a series that I called Peace of the Week to bring peace and comfort to people who were stuck at home, not knowing how long this was going to last. So now I'd like to know how you started out learning the harp. Did you use a book? Was it any of the ones that I talked about here today, or was it something different? Please let us know in the comments. If you found this video helpful, I hope you'll share it with others. Also, give it a thumbs up, and I hope you'll subscribe and join this community that we've started to build of adult harp learners who are in the prime of life. So see you next time on Prime Time Harp. Happy harping.